Something Real Chapter 9. One evening she was in the back, throwing one of many tennis balls for Winchester. The fresh snow, about 4 inches of it, was a good sight for Abby. She kind of missed it. She would throw the ball, and Winchester would go bounding after it. It made Abby giggle to see the dog and snow go flying. Carter stepped out and laughed with her. I think he likes the snow. He sat on a deck chair under the covered portion of the deck. I need to talk to you about what happened in Kearney. I was wondering when one of you would come ask me about it. Abby glanced over at Carter as she threw the ball again. Can you call Crow out here, too? I just don't want to have to tell it over and over. Carter got up and stepped to the door. Sammy. He then waved for him to come outside. Crow pulled on his coat as he stepped out. What do you guys want to know? Abby asked and tossed the ball again. Tell us what happened the night you took off. Crow stood near the table under the awning and waited to hear what she had to say. Abby walked over to where they were and sat down in one of the chairs. I had gone with some acquaintances to a community potluck supper. Abby, now Sarah, laughed along with the other ladies in the car. Did you see how Kevin was flirting with Deanna? Lacey giggled and shook her head. I don't know, Sarah smiled and thought about the pair. I think they kind of go good together. Stephanie nodded and turned from the front passenger seat to look in the back. I do too, it's just funny to see him working so hard to impress her. It's kind of sweet, Bridget told them from the driver's seat. It is, Sarah thought wistfully. It would be nice to have a guy like me that much. All of the women sighed. Yeah, it would, Lacey agreed. They pulled up at Sarah's house, and she took her seatbelt off and picked her purse up off of the seat. Thanks, ladies. I'll see y'all on Monday. They all told her goodbye, and she headed up the walk to her front door. She unlocked the door and walked in. She dropped her purse on the table in the entryway and hung her coat up on a hall tree. She looked up and saw a shadow move. She pulled her gun from under her shirt and turned back to the door. A shot rang out, and she felt the unmistakable burning sensation in her left arm. She then ducked into the sitting room to the left of the door. She turned to see the man in the doorway and fired 3 shots in his direction. He fell to the floor, and she guessed he was dead. She didn't think he would be alone, so she moved quietly through the room to the doorway for the living room. She slowly made the corner, checking the room, and didn't see anything. She took a step into the room and heard the pop. The burning in her shoulder told her she had been hit again. She turned in the direction the sound came from and fired 3 shots. A large man soon came tumbling down the stairs. The pain was searing, but she gathered herself and grabbed her emergency bag. She headed out the back door and quietly made her way to the alley between the houses. She made it down to the other end of town and decided it would be best to approach the house from the back. She jogged down the alley, the pain now excruciating. She gingerly opened the back gate to the chain-link fence and pushed it open. She patted down the path leading up to the back door and then stepped into the yard. She trotted over to the side of the house and started up the steps to the back porch. That's when she heard movement in the house. She quickly moved to the side and peeked into a window. From there, she saw a man in a suit in the kitchen looking out the window in the back door, his gun drawn as if he were ready to shoot. She knew then someone had turned on her. That's when I went to my parish priest. He gave me a car, some money, and a coat. Abby looked over at the 2 men. Why didn't you call me? Crow pleaded with her. I didn't know that man was an FBI agent. I thought he was a high-end hitman, but either way he had to have some federal connections to get the second location. She tossed her hands up. Who could I trust in the system? She thought and shook her head. Hell, my partner even turned on me for those shitheads. Abby stood up and walked to the door. I need a beer. Y'all want one? They both nodded. She soon came back with 4 beers and her cigarettes. She handed the men each one and set the other 2 next to her chair. She picked one up and guzzled about half of it and then lit a cigarette. You're going to get a fast buzz, Crow warned her. Yep, she nodded vigorously. What did Decker do? Nope, he stays out of this. You can tell whoever told you to ask me that to kiss my ass. Abby shook her head and guzzled the other half of the beer. Crow nodded. He agreed with her, and even though his bosses were pressuring him to charge the chief, he wasn't going to push her. I still don't know how I made it out of that house. Why did you leave Montana? It had been bugging Carter for some time, thinking he would have just stayed there, where there was a support system. One afternoon I had just got home. Someone, I won't say who, came to tell me 2 marshals were in the area for something unrelated. Abby shrugged. I figured it wasn't worth taking the chance, so I took off. Why Dallas? Crow wondered what her line of thinking was. It just happened to be where I stopped running. Plus, it's a big city, easier blend in, not a whole lot of people asking questions. What about the case? Crow looked over at her, wondering how she was going to get around that hurdle. I was following it on the internet. Abby looked over at Crow as she opened the second beer. I was going to wait until a month before the trial and call the DA. She took just a sip of this beer. I was going to come in just under my terms. Your internet and phone were checked. You never visited any site frequently other than your homepage. How did you hide it? Carter was curious how she was able to get past them. Everywhere has free Wi-Fi and prepaid cells. Abby looked off into the distance. I even checked on it one time at a home improvement store. Crow and Carter both nodded in understanding. If I have any more questions, I'll come talk to you, but that's all I needed for now. Crow told her and finished off his beer. He stood up and turned to her. If you want to get a good drunk going on, you can. We're here. Abby nodded and seriously considered it. I just might do that. Crow nodded and went back inside. Abby turned and looked at the swing. She grabbed her beer, stepped over, and made herself at home. Carter watched her and then sat down next to her. She moved her unrestricted arm around him. Carter held her, but the two didn't need to speak.